Even as a lot of people find alternatives to the banking system to replace part of their offshore banking plan, I still get asked rather frequently about what I call legacy brand banking countries in Europe: Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Austria, Andorra. People looking for those top tier banks to add to their plan because they've heard about them. They are the gold standard in many people's minds. Today I'm going to share with you an experience that I had with a bank account in Liechtenstein and why I ultimately decided to close that account. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson here at Nomad Capitalist. Our entire team and myself help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. I still think there's a role in everyone's plan for some banking component, for fiat currency, for holding different currencies, for making investments potentially through a bank. There are some countries where if you want to make certain investments, you need to have a bank account in that country. Or in Europe, certain investments require you to have a bank account in Europe. I think there's a role for traditional banks, even as people diversify into hard assets, cryptocurrencies, etc. And so one of the things that I've been telling you for a long time is I happen to like, for people who are new at just dipping a toe in, creating tunnels, as we call them in the offshore banking world, emerging countries. We've talked about the Georgias, the Armenias, the Ecuadors, previously places like Cambodia, even some places like the Czech Republic in Europe can be good, small places to start out, minimal balances, oftentimes an easier onboarding process, so it's less muss and fuss. For higher tier banking, I've often told you about Asia. I like Singapore. I like Asia as a place to have relationships with bankers and be able to build up a bigger portfolio. Let's say you're storing money to do a big real estate deal, for example. I think Asia, I've said, has been very transactional, very straightforward. The fees are reasonable for what you get. And so that's left Europe, right? Now, I've told you before how I'm not a huge fan of European banks because to me it's a lot of marketing, and I'm all for marketing, but it's almost over-marketed where it's, such as we talk about the United States or many European countries. The governments basically take advantage of the fact that for some time in the past they did something good, and they're basically riding that legacy. Swiss banks, I felt, by and large, often fall into that category. Now, there are people here who will tell you, they're the best of the best, you can't do any better. Miraculously, where are those people all located? They're located in Switzerland. And so I think there are some great Swiss banks, and we have clients who are working with Swiss banks they're very happy with. What I'm saying is, and I'm putting Switzerland and Liechtenstein here in the same category because they're right next to each other. They use the same currency. But I'm saying there's a lot of bad experiences there. I'm going to share with you 2 experiences. I had talked to a banker. Now, I'm the Nomad Capitalist. And so perhaps some banks in Europe, where they like to maintain a very low profile, think I'm going to come on and talk about their bank. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to mention the name of the bank that I had a personal problem with. I got enough problems. I have enough problems. I'm not going to mention anyone's names. And I think it wouldn't be professional. But I'll tell you the first time about a year ago, I reached out to a Swiss bank as myself. And I said, hey, I'd like to open an account. They said, okay, here's the minimum. I said, okay, fine. What do I need to do? And the first thing she said is, where do you pay taxes? Okay. I said, okay, Georgia. She said, if it's Georgia in the United States, you might as well just call someone else and leave us alone. I said, no, it's the country. You're from Poland. I can tell by your last name. You guys have a good relationship with Georgia. That's the first thing, by the way. People have this impression that you go to a Swiss bank or a Liechtenstein bank, you're getting some guy who, is from a storied tradition of Swiss banking. You're probably getting somebody who just moved in from Slovakia. Nothing wrong. Nobody loves the Slovakian people more than I do. But, I think a lot of people have this misconception that you're getting this guy who's, the branding is certainly that you're getting some guy who grew up in Zurich. He's a 7th generation banker kind of thing. And so this woman gets back to me. She's very unpleasant. I show it to Mrs. H. She said, what? Why are you talking to her? I said, all right, let me give her a chance. And so I message her again, and we go through, and then we go through the whole process, and she says, well, here's the minimum. It was 10 times the minimum. And I said, well, I thought there was this number. She said, no, that's not what it is. And basically at every step, it's like trying to convert to Judaism. And it's basically at every step I'm being pushed away. No, you can't do it. And basically I left. I said, I don't need this. You put all this kind of money there. I mean, it's much more than you would deposit in, let's say, a good Singaporean bank and get better service. Now, the Singaporean banks sometimes also try and push you away, but you can get through with them a lot more easily. And so anyway, I find another bank. Basically, I am, by the way, your human R&D machine. I'm here doing this so that we can talk to our clients and to a certain extent talk to you about what our findings are. So I find a bank in Liechtenstein. Okay, what's the minimum? Here's the minimum. And they always seem kind of like difficult about, oh, you're just going to put in the minimum? Yeah, I always put in the minimum in any kind of account because I want to see how someone's going to perform. And really not even just putting the blame on them. I want to see how I can get comfortable with it. It may be no fault of their own. I just don't like the online banking, or something's clunky, or I just don't feel good. I want to just work my way into something and feel good about it. And that's just on me. So anyway, I find a bank in Liechtenstein. They say, here's the minimum, agree. We go through like this much paperwork. One thing you have to know about these legacy brand banks is it's a lot of paperwork. Now, what some people don't understand if you're just only used to banking in the United States is opening a serious bank account overseas is not anywhere near what you're going to have walking into your local Chase branch or your local ANZ branch if you're in Australia or whatever. There are some banks, as the emerging ones we talked about, where it's going to be much, much, much easier and much closer to that home country experience. But when you go to a significant bank and you're putting in lots of money, obviously they want to do their checks. So the paperwork is substantial. I have to go and get some things signed and certified and notarized, and so I do that. I send it back. They do a very detailed check. There's a back and forth of this guy's name doesn't match what we found in the Malaysian notary. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're really checking every little detail. So finally they get approved. They said, oh, yeah, how long it'll take? They said, oh, you'll be approved in 3 or 4 weeks. Okay, fine. Relatively straightforward, relatively normal. They come back, they approve me. The first thing we had trouble figuring out is how do I get online banking? And it was almost like I was asking for the nuclear codes or something. How do I get online banking? All right, fine. We'll send you a password. Now, I'm a nomad, so I don't just live entirely in one country. And on top of that, the places where I'm spending time, only one of them, where I haven't been for a while, they're allowed to send text messages to. So it became a real hassle, and we had to do a workaround. They just send something to my house. I had to send in person. It's a real mess. And eventually, I just give up on the online banking because it's so difficult. You're running a business. I don't have days to figure out their online banking system, so I give it up. I send the money in. Now, one other thing you should know about Swiss banks, and again, I'm willing to pay more for a good service, but people should be aware you're going to pay relatively substantial fees just for them to receive your money. And so I think right off the bat, I don't know, 500 or 600 Swiss francs, something like that. And what also you should know about these kind of banks is, the fees are always negotiable. We'll negotiate that later. Even as I'm getting to the next step, my money comes in, I say, okay, we should talk about some, investments. I want to see the whole picture so I can, I can talk about it, and just because that's what I want to do. And it's so much back and forth over the course of weeks. And I said, okay, here's what I want to accomplish. The phone calls never really felt to me, I'm a bit more, emotive perhaps. And they're very cold and just didn't seem, like, it always felt a little bit labored, talking to them. And perhaps they're offended that, we're a little bit different in that regard. But, eventually, about a month later, they sent me some investments. And basically, we went back and forth, and I noticed the replies getting longer and getting further and further apart. And I finally said, like, hey, when should I expect a reply from you on this stuff? I haven't heard from you in a week. I'd like to, get this done. Let's get this finalized. When should I expect to hear from you? Here's the response. You can expect to hear from me in a couple hours, or sometimes in a couple of weeks. And that's when I kind of realized, that's when I started to get a bit more agitated, when it's like, you want to be nasty with me for maintaining the bare minimum, which it's not a super high minimum in the world of Switzerland or Liechtenstein. This is not your top tier, but they're in the legacy brand jurisdiction. But you want to be nasty with me. You want to say, oh, forgive me for each week or week and a half between replying. I was with other clients. To which I think, are you ever telling other clients that you're with me as, your reason for getting back to them late? Perhaps not. And so eventually I said, hey guys, this isn't really acceptable for me. And they pulled a move straight from the corporate hotel playbook. We've never heard such a thing. I'm the first person in the history of private banking who's upset that it takes a week and a half consistently to get replies to literally one-sentence questions, one-line questions on an email. And so then it becomes kind of difficult. And so basically they just go incommunicado on me. And I finally have to send a letter. I've got to sit there, and I dreaded writing this letter because they became very nasty at the end. I have some guy from, wherever, some, new EU country who was a little too confident, quite frankly. And he basically just shut me out. And I had to write a letter to this guy, and I had to write a letter to the CEO and say, just close my account. Now, to my surprise, they never sent a word to me. The customer service really is, it's utterly dreadful. And it's, by the way, it's very typical. As someone who grew up in the United States, and as much as I have been out of the United States for a long time, still have some American tendencies, there's a thing to me where it's like, these European legacy brands very much about you're never as good as they are. And that's kind of the entire thing. So even when you close the account, I said, listen, let's not fight. We're not going to agree. I'm sure you're a fine bank. Just refund my money. You would think they would at least say, oh, okay, not refund my money, but just, close the account, as they had suggested already, and just send it back to me. Here are the account details. Not a word. I wake up one day and I get the money minus thousands of Swiss francs that they'd taken out opening, I presumably, because I never got a statement, never got online banking, never got anything. They won't talk to me. Opening and closing fees, I guess maybe some negative interest rates because it took them so bloody long to set up some investments to move the money out of just cash, which wasn't my goal, to keep it in cash. And so overall, just a very bad experience that led me to say, I have to close the account. And quite frankly, I was gearing up for, this is going to be a month-long process of having to go back and forth with them. Very unpleasant, quite frankly. Now, because, number one, I don't give up, because I am your human R&D specialist, we are pursuing some higher level banks in those countries that we'll be working with. As you know, I don't name specific banks here, just for professional reasons. We do talk to our clients and sometimes with my own personal experiences. But I am going to continue looking at this. What I can tell you is, I'm not a billionaire. I think I've done relatively well in my life. And, I think that I'm able to build a relationship with banks, as I have, by the way, in some cases over time. My experience with the European legacy brand banks, what I've told you for years, it just does not match up. I'm sure you'll have people in Switzerland. Oh, he just doesn't understand. He's just not sophisticated enough. Tut, tut. Listen, if you want to have a banking system in the UK is another one, largely, the private banking there. The UK, Switzerland, Liechtenstein. If you want to have a private banking system for nothing but Russian oligarchs and sixth generation trust fund kids, by all means, put that out there. For the rest of us who are entrepreneurs who just demand some kind of reply, want a little bit of service, we understand. Sometimes you don't reply immediately. But, we're not waiting a couple weeks. You never know. That's why I closed my account. The R&D search continues. As I said, we do have clients who have great accounts in these countries. They're not cheap. And that was my, quite frankly, very unpleasant experience. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.